hearing is that if it's not 6 districts, then you are not going to participate in what the charter says about how districts are handled in the city. I wonder if we want to think about that for a second, because it seems to me like if the vote is 3, you have a right to at least give your input to this section of the charter. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I think we can call the question, and then if it fails, then we can discuss further.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I made the motion. It was seconded by Member Silva.
Okay.
All right. All in favor of presenting this Section 700 to the council as a recommendation? 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have 3. Opposed? Abstaining?
Abstaining.
Okay.
Never heard of that before.
All right.
Heard of voting against your own motion, but that's okay.
Okay.
All right.
So what happens? Could you?
The motion fails.
Motion fails. All right. So let's.
Huh?
I was opposed. Okay. The reason why I made the motion was to move this process along so that we could get an early vote on this and not be here until midnight. So now we have a discussion of how we want to modify this. I am going to state that I voted against it because I too feel that 6 is better than 3 districts.
But Mr. Chair, you have the duty to support the wishes of the overall board. This is very irregular.
I don't. I am simply facilitating this meeting as chair.
No, you're not.
Coulterman.
I don't think by agreeing to become chair of a committee that someone gives up the rights to their own voice and their own opinions. So I disagree with that. And we had a 5-2 vote last time where Mr. Jane and I were the 2 members saying we wanted to see 6 districts. So I would like to know of the people who voted no. So we've heard from 2 of us that want 6 districts. What were the reasons that other people who did vote for 3 districts at the last meeting, what are the objections to this language?
Yes, I'd like to have a discussion. If people prefer 3, how do we change this to make it so that you are willing to vote for this? Yes. Member Bonito.
Yeah, I probably should have, if anything, abstained, but I can go ahead and support it if you want to revote.
Call a motion if you want.
Would someone, would you like to make a motion? Member Cooley, would you like to discuss your vote?
I am very concerned with us talking about individual wording right here when I'm not even sure I fully understand the exact concepts that all of these things we're adopting mean. I'm trying to abstract that right now because I think that's really more important for us to get consensus on that. I definitely think that from what I've heard here, the lines from last time have not changed, so I think we're going to go with a 3-2 system alternating because that's what got voted last time. And now we're really just talking about a recommendation. So I would like us to redirect to the pieces that are still open, which from right now, what I understand that to be is there was some discussion if we should add additional residency requirements. There is some discussion about how people felt about the transition plan, which is part of 700, I think, but it's something that we should discuss. And then should be a discussion about anything about redistricting. And my problem is I can't tell you if this is correct until I know exactly where we want to go as a high level, because I think wordsmithing and I think direction are 2 different things. And for example, I actually don't agree with this. I was much preferring to have a non-alternating solution where multiple people are elected in the same election because that is a fairer system. However, I am fully fine if we're going for this, I'm fully fine saying whether this is good or bad language, but we still have outstanding directional things we haven't decided yet. And I would really like us to resolve those directional things, please.
So why don't you recommend what you want to change here?
Okay. So let me bring this up here. If you scroll down here, we are, the other part of the attachment here. This section has the transition stuff, right?
It does. Yes.
Okay. So I recall like 2 different transition plans being mentioned last time. Is this the one the committee is great for? If we can at least answer that question, I think that's the first step we should do, is answer. There's an alternate solution there. We can't adopt it with an alternate solution. So can we resolve those, please, is all I'm saying. So I'll read it and see if I understand that.
Okay.
Is that in the next?
The transition plan is right here, what we do in 2020 and 2022. Okay, so that's the transition plan. Member Coulterman.
It's my understanding that the judge's ruling covered the 2020 election. So making this transition plan, covered 2018 and 2020.
The
for
March
6 districts.
2020, the March 2020,
March
not
2020,
November 2020.
but March 2020, we're not electing by districts.
That's right, so that's why it's
It's a
not an
primary.
issue.
So this would cover it if we won the
Mr. Doyle-
appeal.
What ask Mr. Doyle?
If we win the appeal, then this would cover that. If we lose the appeal, then we're covered by the judge's order.
No, the judge's order does not cover the March 2020. It covers the November 2020.
We're
I
not
think-
electing
I-
council members.
I think that all you can do at this point is recommend that there be a transition plan, but maybe not the year. At this point, because we don't know what the result of the appeal will be, it may be that we may not be able to do it in this order. So as soon as 2020, and we may have to shift to 2022 to do a transition plan. I think the concept that we would like to get from you is your recommendation as to, do you want 3 districts? Do you want 6 districts? Do you want 3 districts with 2 each that alternate or not? And then do you want to transition in a manner consistent with law? That's about all we can do at this point. In terms of the years, I don't think it's, you're indicating you'd like to do it as soon as possible, but there are a lot of things that might happen between now and 2022 when after the key here is that the redistricting would take place after we get the census figures from 2020, and it'd be much better to be doing that kind of a redistricting once we know those new numbers.
Okay, Member Cooley.
Okay, so my 2 concerns about reading this are, one is I would have said if we're going to have language in there, you'd have to handle both cases of the lawsuit. It sounds like the recommendation from city attorney is that we leave it, we don't deal with that, and it'll be addressed because the lawsuit will be before the final language is put on the ballot. The lawsuit will have, which appeal will have resolved, so therefore we can let that get resolved later. Is that?
We don't have control over when the Court of Appeal will issue its decision. That's the point. If the Court of Appeal issues its decision before, I think it's like the last day to put this on the March ballot would be, maybe December. I don't think it's likely we're going to have a decision by early December. So I think it's best not to worry about that at this committee because there's too many variables, and to simply state the concept of whatever the next realistic election it would be to do the transition. But what we're really looking for from the committee is, and that was the original ask in Measure A, is get from the public through all this input process, through this outreach, what is your recommendation as a committee after hearing everything you've heard? Number of districts, how many people per district, and I think there is a role to say whether you want to have alternating or 2 people run at the same time, or whatever you want.
So
Measure A.
my recommendation
Measure N,
for what needs to be in the transition plan then is that for a 3-district solution, we should go with combining 2 of the existing districts. There should not be any kind of process. Just combine the existing districts until the next redistricting process, which will happen in a couple years anyway. And if there is going to be in the ballot language dates, my recommendation, I think our recommendation should be it should handle both cases. And if it's not going to, if the ballot language does not have dates, then I don't care. But if it has dates, it should handle whether we win or lose the appeal if it happens before the appeal comes through. Because otherwise, people are gonna say, "Oh, you're counteracting the lawsuit," which is not what we're trying to do here. So those would be my two. And at some point, I'd like us to just straw poll of the committee towards if that's the direction we want to recommend. If you want to comment on it.
Any other comments? Okay, I think what we're going to do is, if Member Benito would like to make a motion, since he might have changed his mind, we can take another vote, or we can break this down and just vote on individual concepts.
My only concern is, I'd rather not vote on the exact language because that's not what I do. I'd rather vote on what I feel needs to go in there, then have it put in there, then I could review it. But to move it forward, if that's what we have to do.
May I? So what Section 700.1 covers is the direction from the committee last meeting that the committee had voted 5-2 about going to 3 districts. So Section 700.1 covers the concept of 3 districts. So I would expect the committee to either, agree with Section 700.1 talking about 3 districts or not. The second concept that Section 700.1 covers is that every district will vote in every election once the transition is complete. In other words, you are alternating between gubernatorial and presidential. Section 700.1 covers that. I know Committee Member Cooley in the prior meeting, and he mentioned it tonight, prefers where both council members are elected from the same district at once. So 700.1 covers that concept. The third concept which 700.1 covers is the timing, and as the city attorney suggested, and I agree with him, I don't know if the committee should give us direction on the timing because there are so many variables that play into that. So I think it's important that the committee focus on the first 2 issues. A, that is 3 districts, which is what you guys voted on last meeting. And then the second one is, do you want them alternating or not? And then we will reword the language to match that.
Is there a motion?
Thanks, that was helpful. I will have to figure that out. So my motion would be my motion would be we adopt, or our recommendation will be that we move to 3 districts, 2 members each, alternating each election, and that to transition we merge 2 of the existing 6 districts, and we use a 2-year term to align the votes to the new system. And I think that's what we agreed on last time, and I think we should just say that's what we're going to do.
Yeah,
so I think that's what we're going to do, and then we should talk about the things we haven't said, because...
Excuse me, we already voted on that. All we're voting on is the language, not the concept. We already voted.
I'm not comfortable wordsmithing with what's up there.
Again, how many times do I have to say, we're not doing wordsmithing tonight. We're not voting on exact language of anything. We're voting on concepts.
So this document basically puts down on paper the concepts that we voted on last time. Okay, so again, we can just reiterate that we don't believe that the dates should be in there. I like the way that Member Cooley has expressed what the fundamentals of this express, and we can vote on just what his recommendations are, and we're basically just retaking the vote that we made last time. But here we have some wording that will have to change because of the dates and so on. But I believe that, just to be clear, we can retake the vote. We can also add language based on residency, length of time you have to be a resident if you want. But we can start with that vote if you would like to make a recommendation.
Did you hear a second?
Do we have a second?
Yeah,
Why don't
so
you
my
reiterate?
motion was that we put our recommendation to the council to be, we go to 3 districts, 2 members each, alternating 2 members alternating each election, and that in order to get to that system, we get there by combining 2 existing districts, not doing a new map drawing, and using a 2-year term for a new council member, not an existing council member, to get there.
I second.
Any discussion on that?
I would like to remind the committee that I know as part of your motion, not the entire one, you suggested how you would draw the 3 districts, which you suggested is combining 2 of the existing districts. I don't know if it is within this committee's responsibility on how to suggest drawing those 3 districts, so maybe that portion of your motion may not be relevant for this committee's consideration.
Yeah, I think that you could say conceptually, but that there's going to be all kinds of federal law in place as to how those districts get drawn, and so it may not be able to just we're going to have to look at the populations. We're going to have if this gets done in 2022 as opposed to 2020, then we're going to have new census data, and the 6 districts might have to be redrawn too.
My motion is that we should not, in the process of moving to this new system, we should not have a whole redistricting process before the regularly scheduled 2020 census redistricting process. So I think that's what the recommendation of this committee should be.
Okay, that's a different clarification.
Okay, so that's my clarification.
Okay.
Is that if we need to have a district change, which we do, going to 3-2, before the 2020 census, that it be done by simply merging the existing districts. I think that's a recommendation to council, just for cleanliness and not having another public process in right away.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second, and what I have neglected to do, and I'm very sorry, is to take public input. So would any member of the public like to speak on this item?
Okay.
There's a very simple solution to this problem. Steve Chess and I do not live in Santa Clara. In 2020, use the court-ordered districts for those 4 remaining districts, even if you win the appeal. There's nothing preventing you from putting into the charter that in 2020, you elect 4 people from those 4 remaining districts. Then in 2022, when you elect a mayor and 2 seats, districts 1 and 2 each elect 1 person for 4 years. In 2024, when you have to elect 4 seats, districts 1 and 2 each elect 1 person for 4 years, and that's when District 3 elects their 2 people. The top vote getter serves 4 years. The next person serves 2 years. And then in 2026, and every 2 years thereafter, each district elects 1 person. That way you don't have to worry about, do we win the appeal, do we lose the appeal? You just say, whether or not you win the appeal, use those 4 districts anyway. And that makes it very simple, one set of language that never needs to be changed.
Any other member of the public? Your opinions? Okay. So I'm going to close public input, and Member Cooley, would you like?
Okay, so I'll change my motion to limit it to, I say our recommendation should be 3 districts, 2 members each, alternating each election. Put that in it, then we can talk about the transition plan, because it sounds like there's a couple options we should talk about. So we voted on last time. We didn't say we're going to actually recommend it. So the motion is we recommend to the council 3 districts, 2 members each, alternating each election, which I think is what's covered mostly under this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, call the question. All in.
I don't think anyone ever seconded my first
Oh,
motion.
never seconded. Okay.
Oh, well, do you,
Seconded, then you need to
You have to
agree to
consent to the change.
his amended
Okay.
motion.
I'm in.
Okay. All right. All in favor of that? Opposed? All right. So it's 5-2. That passes to the council. All right. Now we can discuss our transition plan.
So this
No,
motion,
no,
I
no,
pulled
that,
out the transition. It was just
we took
3-2
it out. It
alternating.
was just the alternating.
Okay, so what I've heard here is, at least, so I made two statements last time, which is we should not recommend another public process for redistricting before the 2020 census. I think that it's fine to say that if they're going to just do it for an election, you could combine it. And I've also heard from Steve Cheshire, which I think is a fine idea, saying that we might say that 6 districts hold for the next election. It also has a nice appeal of fairness in that we had 2 districts already, or sorry, 1 district, two people already elected out of the 6-member district system. So if we hold one more election, we'll have 4 more members elected, and it would be everyone got the same amount of votes. It's a very fair thing, and then we can have our new system kick in, and that's completely independent of the lawsuit. So I'm actually fine with both of those 2 things. I think we should pick one and make that recommendation if people have opinions.
Discussion? Is there a second for essentially Steve Cheston's proposal, which is for the 2020 election?
Make a motion?
Oh, did you? You didn't make a motion. Okay. Is there a motion?
Do people not have any opinions?
Does anyone have any? Okay. Well, I would like to move that I like Steve Cheston's plan, which is for the 2020 election, we keep the 6 districts. We elect 4 council members from those 6 districts, and then moving forward, we will have the 1 council member have a 2-year term to realign. That is my recommendation. Is there a second? Okay.
Second.
Second for Member Ricosa. Any comment? Would a member of the public like to comment on this?
Chesson, if your recommendation is what I propose, then I like it.
Very good. All right. All in favor? Yeah.
Or is there any opinion from clerk or attorney that does this sound like reasonable?
Whatever you want to recommend is fine.
No,
It's just a recommendation.
Member Ricosa.
do all 4 of those council seats expire in 2020?
No, there are 4 council members whose term ends in 2020.
So they all 4 of those expire?
There are 4 seats that are
Okay, then
that are up for election in 2020.
Then that's great.
Hey, so all in favor of that transition plan? Opposed? 5-2 passes. Okay, now let's talk about adding any residency requirements, like length of time in the district or I think the recommendation from the attorney is that we don't have any requirements on citizenship, length of citizenship. Member?
Can you say that again?
So now we're going to talk about the residency requirements, right? So we've already passed our transition plan, what we're recommending for the transition. So Member Cooley.
So I'm not quite sure what our first motion covered, but I think that we should say for residency, you must be a resident for your staying, and unless involuntarily redistricted out. And that should be our baseline, and then we should have a subsequent discussion about any additionals, because I think that's where, I think we're at consensus for that. So I just wanted to suggest that we just do that.
So we've already covered that you have to be a resident, and if you move, you have to resign. So that's covered. Now we're talking about what the requirements are to be able to stand for election. So, Member Ricosa.
Yeah, I propose based on what the San Jose Charter says, you have to be a resident in the district for 30 days prior to when you could apply, and based on the recommendation from city staff, you just have to be a U.S. citizen on that day. No 1 year, no waiting time. It's just on the day you apply for the position, you have to be a citizen.
Okay,
Clarification.
yes.
San Jose, I think it says you need to be a resident for 30 days from the close of nomination period. So not
Prior
necessarily
to the
from
close.
Sorry,
For 30 days prior to the close?
prior to the close of nomination period, not to the day of which you apply.
And you can't be a registered voter unless you're a citizen. So I don't think we need to talk about citizenship at all. I just think if we say, we already say you have to be a registered voter. So it's really the only question is do you want to change the time of residency prior to being eligible to run for office?
Okay, so we have a motion of 30 days prior to the close of the nomination period.
So,
Fine, I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, now I'm going to open it up for public comment. Does any member of the public like to comment on this? None?
We got a-
I have a
Oh,
comment.
you have a comment.
So I thought that it says that they have to be a resident in the district, and now you're saying that we're imposing that they have to be a resident in the district 30 days prior. Is that what
This
you're
is to
saying?
hold office. We're
Yeah.
talking about standing for election. If you want to run,
What is the requirement now? There is none, correct?
Right, that's why we're writing it into the charter.
I mean, you move into the city, and you're a resident. You've got an address and a tax bill, and you can run for office. Am I right?
correct.
And that.
So we're
30
changing that
days.
to what
and
San Jose
You're
is saying.
changing it because you're concerned that somebody will live in District 1 and want to run in District. No.
Correct.
To avoid
Correct,
the system,
yeah.
like you said.
Yes. Go ahead, explain it.
Member Coulterman.
So not just that someone would live in one district and then move and run in another district, but that someone would actually live outside of the city of Santa Clara, move in, like within a few days before filing to run by renting an apartment. And that this did happen in District 3, and it was a pretty awful negative
Okay.
election. So I like the 30 days, because if someone is thinking that they want to run in a district, it makes them really think about it in advance.
That's fine. No,
So
thank
that
you.
there can't be gaming of the system.
That's fine.
Okay, Member Cooley.
So I'm actually, I think, philosophically opposed generally to these restrictions at all. I don't see any reason why members of District 1, if they, have a favorite person who lives in Sunnyvale that they think should represent them, I think they should be empowered to do so. However, based on the survey, it's clear there should be a residency requirement. And so my leaning actually is then, well, let's make it as simple as possible. We already have this saying you have to live in the district. I think that's going to cover most of these cases. I think the benefit of putting limits on like 30 days before is if you're going to write something in there saying like the city shall verify, because then there's actually real benefits of saying, oh, get to be there 30 days before the city can ask for the last 30 days or whatever. We aren't doing that. At least I haven't heard us discuss that. I understood it was brought up last time that some of the school districts actually have validation that they check with. And I think that's a fine discussion to have, but I think putting the requirements that you have to live in while you're running and while you are holding should be good enough for the principle of you should be a resident. And then anything about what you have to have in order to qualify to run should be based on a desire to make it easy to enforce by the city. And if we aren't going to go into enforcement by the city, I'd actually recommend we just don't bring it at all. I think it's unnecessary complexity to the ballot measure, unless we are choosing to talk about having the city do something beyond just being there.
City Clerk.
I'm not sure it would be appropriate to talk about how the city would enforce that in the charter language. I mean, certainly there are ways to check with the registrar of voters of when did you register your new address, and we could always check that according to the 30 days. So I would certainly discourage, of course the committee is free to do it, but I would certainly discourage talking about how the city would enforce it. So if the desire from the committee is to say you need to be a registered elector in that district for 30 days prior to the close of nomination, then just say that, and then the clerk's office will bear the burden of enforcing or verifying that during every election without it needing to be as language in the charter.
It is the motion on the floor. So.
Can I just get a clarification? I think you're saying that would be for any elective office, right? Not just council seats. So police chief, clerk, mayor, and council members. Okay.
For Bonito. Okay, so it was made by Ricosa, seconded by Bonito. Seconded by Coulterman. Okay, discussion, did you have a?
Yeah, so with how that was phased, I think this is no more germane to our topic than the previous discussions of things like ranked choice voting, where we said it's a good idea, but we don't want to bring it up because it's not directly related to the move to districts. And particularly if it's going to be on everybody, not just city council, which it should be. If we're going to adopt it, it should be on everybody. I think it should be. I think that we're putting things in here which are not directly related to move to districts, and that I don't think is a good move. So my statement is we should not do it because of that.
Point taken. All right, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? 6-1 passes. We have a 30-day requirement now. Any other items that we need to discuss? Yes, Member Cooley.
Yes. So I was reading through this, which as it was provided, this new bill. It does not revoke Section 2301, I want to say. 23,003. It actually references it, which is where a charter city can adopt by charter or by resolution. So this could be done by resolution about what type of districting body you want. I think we should adopt it. I think we should adopt an independent one. Just to be very clear about what the options were under that law, you could either have an advisory board, which is they have different rules on advisory boards, but the advisory board's basic job is to provide a suggested couple, look at the maps and provide suggestions. You had a hybrid commission whose job it was to, all these get appointed by council, whose job it is to look at the maps and provide 2 or more maps, and the city council chooses one. And then you have an independent commission whose job it is to, the council appoints them, and then they pick one. They don't have to go back to city council at all. This could be adopted by ordinance. I think that it is extremely important that if you're going to go to the districts, how redistricting happens is extremely important. I think we should pick one, and my personal preference would be independent. The city council picks the people to be on the board picks the map, they don't go back to city council. And that's all we have to say in our recommendation is we should adopt the independent commission as defined by state law.
City clerk.
So, along the lines of what Committee Member Cooley was saying, and I think this is the last item which, unless there's more, of course, but this is from what was provided in terms of language, is one that you have not yet discussed, is the districting process and the redistricting process. On the third paragraph of what you're seeing there, it covers the concept of council members being districted out if they so happen to live near the border of a district and it is redrawn every 10 years and they get redistricted out. That third paragraph says that they'll continue to serve the term, the remainder of their term. So they're not going to get kicked out because they were drawn out of their district. They will continue to serve the remainder of their term. And then it'll say they, of course, notwithstanding what we just talked about, which is you got to be a member of your district to run, but you can continue to serve the remainder of your term. The first 2 paragraphs, basically you would pick one of the 2 or your own, a third version. What the first one says is that the council by ordinance will decide how the districts are drawn. That's it. What the second one says is that the council by ordinance will decide how districts are drawn, but they are bound by not violating the state code section 23003, which has those different options. I think what Committee Member Cooley was referring to. So, if you have anything more to add to that.
Yeah, no, I just want to point out that Elections Code section 23003 deals with the type of body that does the redistricting, and then the language in the I forget what's the number?
AB 849.
That tells that body how to do the redistricting. So I think we would follow the state law with how to do the redistricting, and it's up to you to say which type of body the council should choose to do the redistricting. Is that clear? Does everyone understand what the distinction? So it's really the composition of the body that does the redistricting, and then there are the rules on redistricting. I think state law pretty much spells out the rules for redistricting, and then the elections code provides 3 different alternatives for how to do it, for what type of body should do it.
So the third paragraph there is basically already covered by AB 849, right?
I think it's probably in state law too. It doesn't hurt to have it in the charter too, but
I see. Okay. So I guess I would like someone to make a motion of which of these two we prefer.
I have a nit and then a motion. Just a note on the wording there. Section 23003 is a defining of how you do independent or advisory. 23001 is the one that says you may pick 1, 2, or 3. Just in terms of which one. If you look at 230, this is just saying the rules of if you have a hybrid or an independent, which is, so I think that's pointing to the wrong one. So that's just a note. My recommendation is we would adopt the alternate, and we would, so I would like to recommend that we adopt the alternate and that we put in which one we do, which I would say independent. I think we should probably do those separately to see if people would prefer picking one of those solutions and then which one we pick. Or would you want to just go all the way?
Are you making a motion?
Yeah, so I'm kind of...
I'm fine to split into two different motions.
Okay, so then I'll move that we pick the alternate, which says that the districts will be drawn by one of the solutions under 23001.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ricosa. All in favor? Oh, any member of the public like to weigh in on this? Okay. All right. Let's take a vote. All in favor of the alternate? Unanimously? All right. Do you have another motion?
Yeah, so just to quickly reiterate what the options were under 23001, you have advisory, hybrid, and independent. Advisory gets appointed by City Council and then makes recommendations back to City Council. Hybrid gets appointed by City Council and makes a recommendation back to City Council, but the City Council could only pick from those recommendations. They can't discard it. And independent is City Council appoints them, and then they do not have to go back to City Council. So within that, I'll open it up by suggesting that we put in that Santa Clara shall use the independent redistricting commission model. That was a motion.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Member Coulterman. Any member of the public like to weigh in on this? Okay, any discussion? Member Coulterman.
I just heard from so many residents, they wanted to make sure that the redistricting process was done independent of the city council.
Okay, so let's call the question. All in favor of an independent districting commission? Okay, opposed? Member Silva, I'm going to call that. Member Silva is opposed, and Member Almazal abstains. Okay, so that passes. Any other items that we need to bring forward as recommendations to council? Yes, Member Coulterman.
So I like this third paragraph because it ensures that if someone is boundaried out, that they hold their office until the end of the term to which they were elected. So I would actually like to include that third paragraph. I would like to hear from other members of the committee what they're thinking about that.
Well, I am in favor of that, but I believe that it's somewhat redundant because it's covered by AB 849, but nevertheless, we could put it in there.
I agree with Committee Member Coulterman.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have?
I make a motion that we add the paragraph 3 to our recommendations to the council.
Second.
Seconded by Almazal, member of the public. Okay, let's call the question. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Okay, any other thing that we need to discuss? Okay, we may be done. So I would like to ask for any public input on any of the stuff, not just the whole process or the recommendations. Seeing none, is there a motion to
I would
say
just
that-
like to say, on behalf of the city, I really want to thank the committee. This was not an easy thing that you had to do. This is my third or fourth committee that I've sat through, and I really think you did a great job. So I just wanted to thank you, and because this takes a lot of your time, and you really devoted it, and I think that it should be mentioned in public.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion? Oh, Member Colterman.
I just wanted to say thank you to city staff for all of your support and everything you've done for us, and I wanted to thank the rest of the members of the committee. It's been a pleasure serving on the committee with all of you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to encourage all of the committee members. I know this is probably the last official meeting, right? So I would still like to encourage you all that when this is brought to council, whenever this is scheduled to bring to council, you're absolutely more than welcome, actually encouraged to come. Council may also have questions. I know in the past, having served in several committees before, even sometimes they'll have questions because they have to make their own decision anyways, and they may have questions during the meeting. And so, of course, feel free to, actually, I encourage you to come to the meeting as well, as committee members, or former committee members by then, I guess, to weigh in and speak your opinion.
Send us an email then in case we don't know.
Certainly, absolutely.
Hey,
Yes.
Member Almazal.
I just want to say that I lived in the city a long time and really waited for an opportunity to have voting opportunities as we have designed through this process. So I'm really happy that I got to be on the committee because I think it's really worthwhile. It may change. It may not look exactly the way we envisioned it tonight with our recommendations, but certainly moving to districting in the city of Santa Clara is healthy for all the citizens. And so I'm really happy I got to do this. Thank you so much to city staff and to the members of the committee and to the chairperson, Mr. Jane.
Well, and finally, I just want to say that it's really been great working with all of you. You put a lot of time into the listening sessions, the outreach sessions, reading all the documents, talking to your neighbors. And I want to thank the public for getting involved. We've had several people that have come to almost every meeting, and it's great to see people engaged. And I really hope this passes in a ballot initiative. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, adjourned.